Today we are going to learn about line graphs. A line graph is a visual way to represent data. We use line graphs to show changes over time. So, if we draw a graph, we usually see that on the x-axis is units of time, often years or months. And then we see on the y-axis, we will often see a scale of something, count of something, dollars or percents. So percents, dollars, or count. So let's look at a line graph to see what kind of information we can learn from it. This is a line graph from the Pew Research Center, and it shows the teen birth rate from 1940 to 2012. So we see that on the x-axis, right here, we have a unit of time, in this case, years. And then we see on the y-axis that we have a count, number of births per 1,000 females aged 15 to 19, and this just represents teen birth rate. Now let's look at the line graph specifically. So from the line, we can see that the highest teen birth rate is represented by this data point, and that was in the year 1957. With 96.3 births for every 1,000 females aged 15 to 19. We can also see that the lowest teen birth rate was in 2012 with 29.4 births per 1,000 females aged 15 to 19. I said earlier that line graphs are great at telling us how things change over time. So let's look at how much the teen birth rate has declined from 1991, represented by this data point, to 2012, represented by this data point. So first we need to know the teen birth rate in 1991. So we have it right here. The teen birth rate in 1991 was 61.8. Now let's look for the teen birth rate in 2012. Pause the video here and see if you can figure out the teen birth rate in 2012, and then continue listening to find out if you got the answer correct. Okay, so let's look at the teen birth rate in 2012. We see that it's 29.4. So the teen birth rate in 2012 is 29.4. And now we want to look at the decline in birth rate. So we want to subtract these two numbers. So if we subtract 61.8 minus 29.4, we get 32.4. So the birth rate declined by 32.4 births per 1,000 females aged 15 to 19 from the years 1991 to 2012. Now let's look at how many times higher the birth rate was in 1991 than in 2012. So we already have the numbers of the birth rates in 2012 and in 1991. So now we just have to figure out how to tell how many times higher one number is than the other. So we do this by dividing. So we take the birth rate in 1991 and divide it by 29.4, which is the birth rate in 2012. So we want to know about how many times. So we can make this problem a little bit easier for ourselves. We can say 61.8 is about 60, and 29.4 is about 30. So now we have 60 over 30. And this is a pretty easy division problem now. So we can look at 60 over 30 and say that's 2. So we can say that the birth rate was about 2 times higher in 1991 than in 2012. Of course, we could have used our calculator and looked at these two numbers, but then we would have just rounded to 2 anyway. So often you can simplify a problem by rounding to the nearest number when looking at line graphs. This is a good strategy, especially in the social studies section where you would not have access to a calculator, but may be asked to do problems like this. Overall, we can see that using line graphs, we can tell trends over time, especially looking at declines, increases, and how many times higher certain rates were in one year over another.